Australia's agricultural ministers will on Thursday discuss banning caged eggs by 2036. That's 12 years earlier than first planned. They'll be banning eggs that come from hens in battery cages and not from free-range hens out in the paddock, happily frolicking around, free, just as nature always intended. The thing is, more than a third of our eggs still come from battery hens. And setting those hens free is going to cost a lot of egg farmers a lot of money to convert to free range. Perhaps $1 million each, more, depending on the size of the operation, because for one, you need a lot more land to put them all in. And that is actually going to cost you. Now, these caged eggs, these ones here, a dozen, they cost me less than $5, right? But you look over in New Zealand, which banned battery hens this year. Just 10 eggs, that's how they sell them there, they're different. The 10 eggs, I found, cost nearly double, nearly $12. And you can see from this graphic of food prices in New Zealand this year that egg prices in particular rocketed from when the ban kicked in. Immediately. The ban kicked in, causing shortages of eggs, etc., and higher prices. Now, New Zealand, as a result, now has the second most expensive eggs of any country in the world, behind only Switzerland, which has also banned caged eggs. But is this ban really yet another one based on emotion, like the ban on nuclear power, based on emotion rather than facts? Because the thing is, we're talking about chickens in cages, not people. And chickens, do I need to remind you, are different. For instance, Dr. Jeff Downing of Sydney University tested stress levels of chickens in cages and in free-range chickens, and surprise, found no difference. The ones running free didn't, to him, seem happier. And Downing said, well, you know, that makes sense. Once chickens get into very large group sizes, running around the yard, there is just so much social interaction, this can be quite stressful for some hens. There is far more potential in these big group sizes for social stress. And Dr. Charles Milne, Victoria's former chief vet, he said, yes, indeed, chickens are related to forest-dwelling birds and don't actually like open spaces. I guess they feel vulnerable, you know, hawk attacks or whatever. And free range, he said, can deliver huge welfare problems. So, it's for this that we're now going to make eggs another luxury, yet another one that the poor can only dream of. Joining me is Dugald Saunders, is leader of the New South Wales Nationals and the former New South Wales Agriculture Minister, now Shadow Minister. Dugald Saunders, thank you so much for coming on the show. Look, it's not a very popular opinion, I know that. People would be really upset. You know, they think of chickens as mini humans. Chickens in a well-run battery can be just as happy as ones running outside. But should that statement really be simply dismissed?
Look, Andrew, good to join you this evening. I think the point we have is that we've got an Ag Ministers meeting coming up, as you mentioned, on Thursday, where agricultural ministers from right around the country will get together. Last time I was there, I sort of stood up and said, New South Wales, if we need to be, we will be different. We won't necessarily toe the line to say, we need a national harmonisation here, because currently New South Wales is the second largest egg producer in Australia, behind Queensland, and really taking advice from places like Western Australia, where they've got about 5 chooks, it doesn't really make sense. And the graph you just showed previously, the egg price difference after banning caged eggs in New Zealand, is a very graphic way of showing the difference that will make in Australia as well. And in New South Wales, you know, we know everyone's going through a cost of living crisis at the moment. So to think that we can bring forward the removal of caged eggs in any really sharp way is probably a disingenuous thing to say. We all understand that at some point the industry will move towards less cage and more free range. But it needs to be industry-led, it needs to be consumer-informed, and governments should at this point in time stay out of the way.
Now, Dugald Saunders, look, I know it's Twitter death for a politician to say, look, a chook is just as happy in a cage as it is running around the yard, because intuitively most people think, no, that can't be the case. But can I just try you once more? Do you think a chook in a well-run battery operation is just as happy as one running around in the yard?
Look, I've seen both, Andrew, and I've up until fairly recently had my own chooks. And chooks in social groups do end up you end up with the term henpecked comes from hens picking on each other. If there's a weaker one, hens will gang up, and that does happen in free range scenarios. It does happen in barn laid scenarios. It's less likely to happen or as frequently in a caged egg system because there are less chickens in a cage together. So it doesn't mean it can't happen though. I guess to look at that further, when I've been to all of these different ways of containing chickens, in a caged environment, in a large shed, which is well ventilated, it's very quiet, it doesn't smell very much, and the chickens are really very quiet and seemingly happy. In a barn environment, it changes a bit more to be a bit more raucous and a bit more dusty because chickens move around in the barn. And free range, it's quite a smelly system inside where they come to lay the eggs. And there are biosecurity concerns around a free range system that we'll need looking at. So anything as we move from one towards another, you need to think about costs for producers. You mentioned that. And we're talking anywhere between $5 and $20 million, depending on the size of operations, to move from cage to free range. And at the same time, we've got a greater biosecurity risk. We've seen avian influenza really devastate flocks of chickens across the world previously. And other things where antibiotics would be needed more often because chickens are outside interacting in a different way and are more therefore likely to be facing those biosecurity risks. So I'm not going to say one's definitely happier in a situation than another, Andrew, but I've definitely seen them in all
I don't mean you don't have to. You don't have to. You just have to say they're not necessarily happier at all, and for that, the poor won't be able to afford eggs. I mean, seriously, Dugald, Saunders, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.